Chris, thank you.
The shocking murders of a mother and daughter in the Perth suburb of Floreat has sent shockwaves across the nation and sparked a fresh push for tougher gun laws in WA. For more on this, Federal MP for Curtin, Kate Chaney, joins us from Canberra. Kate, good morning. Thanks for coming on the program.
It's okay.
This is your community in Perth. You described yourself on the weekend as being exhausted from these conversations and utterly furious. How are you feeling today?
Well, I think there is a huge amount of sadness in my community about these women and their loss, and that's really, you know, the main thing that the community is talking about at the moment. But it has also moved on to how could this have happened in our community and how do we prevent this from happening in future. So I think there's real desire to see change when it comes to both the use of guns but also domestic violence.
And have you've spoken to the community? Have you spoken to family members at all?
I've spoken to friends. Obviously, the family is very, very distressed at the moment, but I've spoken to friends of the deceased, and they're very, very upset by what's happened. Were
you shocked to learn that the shooter had 13 guns?
Well, it really makes no sense to me. I mean, I can't see any reason to have 13 firearms in the suburbs of Perth, and I think people are very surprised to hear that that's possible in the suburbs. There's really, no justification for it. So that was a shocking element. Obviously, it only takes one gun to shoot someone with, but the volume of firearms certainly seemed to be a red flag.
The WA government was already bringing in tougher gun laws, and Roger Cook yesterday, the Premier, suggested that this might now require more updating of that legislation. What did you think of the initial laws that were being brought in? Because it was going to have limits on the number of guns people could own, mental health checks for gun owners. One of the things that comes up is about the fact that under these current laws, people could still challenge to get their guns back if they'd been seized, even if they had restraining orders out against them.
Well, I think these reforms are definitely a step in the right direction, and I think there'll be strong community support for them. Obviously, there is a balance with individual rights, but I think having greater checks in place so that we make sure we're not putting guns into the hands of potentially dangerous people is something the community can get behind. People we may need to have some opportunity to challenge, but if we have processes in place that mean that is only challenged in valid circumstances, I think it will increase the trust that people have in the system and the sense of safety.
Does this need to have a national approach?
Well, like so many things, it is really important that the federal government and state governments work together. And gun laws, vary from state to state. Broadly on the domestic violence issue, I think there are lots of opportunities for state and federal to be working closely together to look at justice reform, frontline service provision, risk assessment and how we collate data across boundaries, and also cultural change and how we actually change the fact that some men are still seeing violence as being an answer.
Today the federal government's going to announce its expert panel who's on it to be engaged in this issue, and that is likely to bring about new measures as well on top of the $3.4 billion that was announced to try and tackle this. Is it enough? Are we doing enough as a nation right now?
Well, I think the point of that expert panel is to answer that question, are we doing enough? And it does feel to me like at the moment across the country, not just in my community, there is a strong appetite for making it a priority to keep women safe. So I think further action will come out of this. I certainly hope it will, and I'll be driving to see some of those improvements in things like justice reform, where so many women I've spoken to have said there is no point getting a VRO, because if it's breached, nothing happens. And these are the sorts of issues that I'm hoping that expert panel will look at and will come up with recommendations that we can implement while there is this broad sense of appetite for keeping women safe.
Kate, what's driving you on this?
Well, I think, like so many people, I know people who have been affected by this, in my community and in my family, but also just I think as a woman today, it does come down to a sense that we should not have to fight so hard to feel safe in our homes, in our workplaces and in the community. And I think that's a really broad sense, and certainly with my crossbenched colleagues, there is a strong sense that we can speak up. We have a voice in Parliament now, and I want to see government responding and listening to the fact that half the people in the country often don't feel safe.
Independent MP for Curtin, Kate Chaney, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, Lisa.